Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm in my early 30s, and I've been married to David for 5 years now. Before I go on, please like and subscribe to follow my journey. When David and I first got married, everything seemed perfect. We were deeply in love and had big plans for our future, but recently, things have become more complicated. One night, I was working late at my design agency when I got a text from my friend, Sarah. "Hey girl, Mark and I are grabbing dinner tomorrow night. Do you and David want to join?" I sighed, knowing David would probably come up with an excuse not to go. He had been avoiding our friends lately. "Thanks for the invite. I'll ask David and let you know," I replied. The next morning at breakfast, I brought it up. "So, Sarah invited us to dinner with her and Mark tonight. I thought it might be nice to go out for a change," I said. David barely looked up from his phone. "I can't. I have a big presentation to prepare for tomorrow," he said. "You've been working late every night this week. One dinner won't hurt," I gently pressed. He finally looked at me, but I could see he was irritated. I said, "I can't, Olivia, my job is important, and spending time together isn't." The words came out before I could stop them. "Isn't important?" David's jaw clenched. "That's not fair. You know how crucial this deal is for my career." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I understand that, but our marriage needs attention too. When was the last time we did something fun together?" I asked. "We went to my mother's for dinner last weekend," he replied. I resisted rolling my eyes. "That's not what I meant by fun." He stood up abruptly, clearly frustrated. "Well, what do you want from me, Olivia? I'm doing my best here." As he stormed out of the kitchen, I called after him. "I want us to be partners again, to actually talk and spend time together." The front door slammed behind him. I sat down in my chair, holding back tears. This wasn't what I imagined marriage would be like. Where had we gone wrong? And more importantly, how could we fix it? I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, "Count me in for dinner. David can't make it. Maybe a night out with friends would help clear my head." As I got ready for work, I couldn't shake the feeling that David and I were drifting apart. I loved him, but love alone wasn't enough. We needed to learn how to communicate and reconnect. I grabbed my bag and headed out, determined to find a way to bridge the growing gap between us. Our marriage was worth fighting for. I just hoped David felt the same way. As I stood in the nursery, gently rubbing my swollen belly, I wondered if we could fix things before our baby arrived. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had been with me for the past few months. It had been a whirlwind of emotions: joy about becoming a mother, anxiety about all the changes ahead, and the growing tension between David and me. "Olivia," David called from downstairs, "can you come down? We need to talk about something." I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what I knew was coming. When I walked into the kitchen, David was sitting at the table, looking serious. "I've been thinking," he began as I sat down. "I want to name the baby after my mother." My heart sank. This was exactly what I had been dreading. "David, we've talked about this. I'm not comfortable with that," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Why not? She's going to be the baby's grandmother. It's a family tradition." "Because your mother is difficult," I said carefully. "She's always interfering in our lives. I don't want her to have even more control over us or our child." David's face flushed with anger. "That's ridiculous. My mother just wants what's best for us." I couldn't hold back. "What's best for us or what's best for her? This is our child, David. We should choose a name we both love." He stood up and started pacing the kitchen. "You're being selfish, Olivia. This is important to me and my family." I felt my own anger rising. "And what about what's important to me? Don't I get a say in our child's name?" David's face twisted in frustration. "You're just jealous of my mother. You've never liked her." "That's not true," I protested. "I've tried to get along with her, but she's always criticizing me and trying to control our lives." David suddenly turned around, his eyes flashing with anger. "Don't talk about my mother like that." Before I could react, his hand slapped my cheek. The sound echoed in the kitchen as I stared at him in shock, my hand flying to my stinging face. For a moment, everything froze. The reality of what just happened hit both of us. David's eyes widened in horror. "Olivia, I'm so sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean to. I don't know what came over me." I backed away from David, tears filling my eyes. "Don't touch me," I whispered. "It was an accident," David pleaded. "I would never hurt you on purpose. I'm just stressed about the baby and work." But his excuses didn't matter. I rushed out of the kitchen and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed Sarah. "Sarah," I choked out when she answered. "Can you come over? I need help." As I waited for her, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The red mark on my cheek reminded me of how bad things had gotten. How did we end up here? And more importantly, what was I going to do? I heard David's footsteps outside the door, and I flinched. "Olivia, please come out. We need to talk," he said. I stayed silent, my mind racing. This wasn't just about the baby's name anymore. It was about respect, safety, and the future of our family. When I heard Sarah's car pull up, I knew I had some tough decisions to make. Days passed in tense silence. I avoided being alone with David, my emotions all over the place. Finally, I realized we couldn't go on like this. I had to confront him. I found David in his study, hunched over his laptop, taking a deep breath. I stepped in. "We need to talk," I said firmly. David looked up, his face filled with guilt and worry. "Olivia, I held up my hand to stop him. "No, I need you to listen." David nodded and closed his laptop. "What happened the other day is unacceptable. I will not tolerate violence in our relationship. Do you understand?" "I do," David said quietly. "I'm so ashamed, Olivia. I never meant to hurt you, but you did," I replied. "And it's not just about the slap. It's the way you've been treating me, ignoring my feelings, putting your mother's wishes above our marriage." David's shoulders slumped. "You're right. I've been a terrible husband lately," he admitted. "I love you, David," I said, my voice softening a little. "But I'm scared of what might happen if you lose your temper again. Scared for our child." "There won't be a next time," David insisted, looking me straight in the eye. "I swear." I shook my head. "Words aren't enough. We need help, professional help." To my surprise, David nodded. "You're right. I'll do whatever it takes. Marriage counseling, anger management, anything." A small flicker of hope sparked inside me, but I remained cautious. "I appreciate that," I said, "but you need to understand. If anything like this ever happens again, I'm gone. No second chances." "I understand," David said, his tone serious. "I'll make the appointment for counseling first thing tomorrow." True to his word, David scheduled our first session. As we sat in the therapist's office, I could feel the tension coming off him. "So, what brings you here today?" the therapist, Dr. Mitchell, asked. David cleared his throat. I hit my wife. It was a terrible mistake, and I want to make sure it never happens again." Dr. Mitchell stayed calm and neutral. "Olivia, how do you feel about what happened?" "Hurt, angry, scared," I said honestly. "I love David, but I don't know if I can trust him anymore." As the session went on, David tried to explain. "Work has been so stressful lately. My boss is pushing me hard about this big deal." "That's not an excuse," Dr. Mitchell gently interrupted. "Stress doesn't justify violence." David's face turned red. "You're right. I know that. I don't know why I reacted that way." "That's what we're here to figure out," Dr. Mitchell said. "David, have you ever had anger issues before?" As David began to talk about his past, I felt mixed emotions. Part of me was glad he was trying, but another part wondered if it was too little, too late. Later in the session, I found my voice growing stronger. "David, you need to understand that your actions have consequences, not just for me, but for our child, for our future." David nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know I want to be better. For you and for our baby," David said. "I'll do whatever it takes." As we left the counseling session, I felt a small glimmer of hope. It was a small step, but maybe it was a step in the right direction. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a gradual change in our relationship. The counseling sessions were tough but eye-opening. We learned to really listen to each other and to share our feelings without blaming. Slowly, we started rebuilding trust. One evening, as we sat on the porch swing, David turned to me. "I've been thinking about the baby's name," he said cautiously. I tensed, remembering our earlier argument. "I realize now how unfair I was," he continued. "This is our child, and we should choose a name we both love. How about we start fresh and make a list together?" A wave of relief washed over me. "I'd like that," I said with a smile. We spent the next hour coming up with name ideas, laughing at the funny ones. It felt good to be on the same team again. As my due date got closer, I saw more positive changes in David. He was more attentive and willing to compromise, though I knew we still had more work to do. One day, I overheard him on the phone with his mother. "No, Mom, we're not naming the baby after you," he said firmly. "Olivia and I have chosen a name together." I felt proud of him for standing up to her. When labor finally began, David was by my side the whole time. After hours of waiting, I held our baby girl in my arms, filled with love and a sense of accomplishment. "Welcome to the world, Arya Hope," I whispered, tears in my eyes. David squeezed my hand. It's perfect, he said softly, just like her. As we settled into life with our newborn, I reflected on how far we had come. The journey hadn't been easy, but we faced our problems head on. We learned how to communicate, respect each other's boundaries, and compromise. Now, I have a question for you. If you were in Olivia's shoes, would you have given David a second chance after he slapped you, or would you have left immediately? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone in a similar situation. If you found this story meaningful, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Your support helps us continue sharing important stories like Olivia's.